We are living in an unprecedented time. On the 1st of October 2019, Xi Jinping said no force on this earth can stop the Chinese people and nation. Little could he know how Covid-19 would stop his nation, cause the entire nation to stop work, stay at home, all caused by something so small that it is invisible to our eyes. We have seen the disease gather speed and spread so quickly around the world, and now in Thailand. Maybe in January it was something that you saw on the news but didn't worry too much about. But as time has passed, week by week, it has become something bigger and greater, something coming ever closer to ourselves. At first, Newton, the Deputy Prime Minister, said it was just a flu bug. People said it will not come to Thailand. People said it doesn't like the heat. But slowly we have watched it spread until now it is affecting people throughout Greater Bangkok, the whole of Thailand, and the whole world, and coming right into our life, our family's life, and affecting our homes and our daily living. I saw this cartoon that shows some of the thoughts that have been passing through our minds over the past few weeks. Have I caught the virus? If I breathe in, do my lungs hurt? I don't have a mask. Oh no, doctors are having to reuse masks. My money is running out. Masks are expensive. Returnees to Thailand are not quarantining. Still, the tourists are coming. I must hold my breath when I pass anyone. If I touch anything, I must wash my hands with alcohol gel. I'm too afraid to go outside. I should self-quarantine. When I read the news, I feel depressed. These thoughts can go round and round our heads. We can't sleep. We keep looking at social media and government reports. These are some of the worries that I'm facing this afternoon. Afraid of COVID-19, afraid of the future, worried about my family, struggling financially, worried about my job. We're all having to change the way we live to adapt to this crisis we are facing. Even this sermon has had to be recorded online as we cannot meet together this afternoon. But there is some good news. In China, the number of new cases has dropped to 1 to 2 per day. There's been an amazing work by doctors and nurses and hospitals, the World Health Organization, labs, pharmaceutical companies to fight this disease. It's been amazing to see people quarantined in China and Italy singing to encourage their neighbours, to see hotels and restaurants deliver food to the elderly and people at risk free of charge, to see people clapping and cheering on the doctors and nurses and people fighting against this disease. It reminds us how helpless we are in this situation. The bankers, big business, armies are all useless. We can only take their advice, the advice of the doctors, stay at home while they risk their lives looking after patients, looking for a cure. It's also a reminder that in salvation, we too are helpless. We're dependent totally on God to save us, God to cure us of sin, to bring us to spiritual health through Jesus' sacrifice at the cross. Even now, when we're feeling scared, stressed, and all the emotions and questions that we've talked about, Jesus is with us. Jesus is with you this afternoon. He's with your family. He understands our fears, and we don't need to wait for an announcement. We can go to him at any time. We can bring all of our fears, our emotions, our questions to him. He is our loving Heavenly Father. So I want to share some encouragements from God to keep you going during this time. Firstly, I want you to look back and remember Jesus. In all of the news coming in, we need to take time to stop, to turn off the notifications, and to do two things: to look back and to look forward. God is for us. He is on our side. In Romans 8, verse 31, it says, if God is for us, who can be against us. God wants the best for us. God is more powerful than COVID-19. He brought us into this situation, and by his grace and with his help, he will bring us through this. Nothing in this world, no power can keep us from the love of Christ. In Romans 8 verse 35 it says, "Who shall separate us from the love of Christ?" Nothing in this world, no power can keep us from the love of Christ. We might be separated from those we love. We may be separated from one another. We may be separated from our shopping malls, our movies, even our hairdresser, but we can never be separated from the love of Christ. Look at this list that Paul gives us in verse 35. Trouble and hardship, persecution, famine and nakedness, danger and sword. And if we're to add to this list COVID-19, even this disease cannot keep us from the love of Christ. Paul, even when he was in prison, he knew the love of Christ, no matter what situation, whether he was shipwrecked, whether he was alone in self-isolation, kept by the Romans, but yet he knew the love of Christ. And that is the hope that we can have. Look back and remember Christ. These things mentioned in verses 38 to 39 of Romans 8 are very real to us. Life and death, angels and demons, the present or the future, anything in all creation. You know, life and death, perhaps they were something that you didn't think so much about even a few weeks ago. But now we realize we are fragile. Our lives are fragile. Our health cannot be taken for granted. But in life or death, nothing can separate us from Jesus. The spiritual realities we face, our worries about today and what the Thai Health Department will announce, the future, what will happen tomorrow to us, to Thailand, to the world. God says these things are under my control, not ours. Then finally, Paul says nothing in this universe can keep us from the love of Christ. Nothing. Look back and remember, nothing at all, no power, no authority, no disease, nothing will be able to stop God from loving us. Let this be an encouragement to you today. Maybe put this verse, Romans 8:39, put it on your shaving mirror, put it over the sink where you wash your dishes, put it on the lock screen of your phone, and remember, nothing can take Jesus and God's love away from you. And then I want you to do something else. I want you to look forward and wait for the glory that is to come. In the UK, all exams are cancelled. Some might be glad of this, as the results of their coursework or their previous exams were not looking good. We once had a student who was kicked out of university because of bad grades. When his father asked him how his exams were, he always said, "Oh, D crap, D crap." But his father thought he was saying D in time, meaning good. But actually what he was saying was he got a grade D. In other words, he failed his exam. In Romans 8, verse 28, it says that for Christians, for those who love God, God makes all things work together for good. Even our mistakes, our sins, our failure. At the cross, there was pain, there was suffering, there was injustice, there was betrayal and a terrible death lasting hours in darkness. It was something terrible, but we call that day Good Friday. Why? Because God had a greater plan to turn even that day to good. In the same way, even though we suffer all the things Paul mentions in verses 35 and 38 to 39, yet God has a plan in the end that they will work out for our good. This is a great hope that we can look forward to something greater in the future. For those without Christ, without hope, without a future, it may look dark today, but for us, I want you to cling to this hope that God works all things for good for those who love God and are called according to his purpose. And so we look forward to wait for the glory that is to come. In the meantime, in verse 29, Paul goes on to say that God is conforming us to his likeness, to the likeness of Jesus. He's making us more like Jesus. Now more than ever, we need to look beyond COVID and the news that makes us feel so scared and helpless to realize that God is at work in our lives. God is like a potter, and God is shaping us day by day, even through this situation, even through this self-isolation, even through this world situation. God is shaping each one of us to look more like Jesus. And what God is preparing for us in heaven is so glorious, so amazing, and will go on for so long in eternity that our sufferings cannot be compared to it. In verse 18, he says, our present sufferings are not worth comparing with the glory that will be revealed in us. And Jesus, even when he went to the cross, he knew that God was preparing something for him that made all of the suffering worthwhile. This is the hope that we have as Christians. Our sufferings are not in vain. They are not meaningless. God is preparing something greater for us in the future. We might wonder, why does God allow such things to happen? And while it looks as if humans are eating wild animal meat at a market, that was the source of this virus, but we can be sure of one thing: God has a plan. C.S. Lewis, a Christian professor, once said about suffering, God whispers in our joys, God speaks using our conscience, but God shouts in our pain. It is his megaphone to wake up a world that does not want to hear. So I want you to remember these three things, these three great encouragements from God this morning. Firstly, to look back and remember that nothing can separate us from the love of God. Secondly, to look forward. God is preparing something amazing for us, kept for us in heaven. Nothing can compare with the glory that will be revealed in us. And thirdly, God is working all things together for our ultimate good. God has a plan. God is working everything out, the good and the bad, for our ultimate good. And finally, we have an example to follow. We have the example of Christ that we've already talked about, how he went to the cross on our behalf. But during this COVID epidemic, we've seen the example of this Chinese doctor who spoke out to warn people about COVID, even though the police, the hospital authorities and others told him to stop. He didn't stop treating his patients for COVID, even though he knew how dangerous this new virus was. Even when he was in ICU, he told a friend that he wanted to get better so that he could continue to treat his patients. He lived his life caring for others and sacrificed himself that others might live. Brothers and sisters, do not lose hope. Keep following Jesus' example. Look out for others, not just for yourself. If Jesus wanted a comfortable life, he would have stayed in heaven, but he came to help others. And God has placed us into this situation, not just that we would look after ourselves and look after our families, but look out for one another. Look out for opportunities to do good to others. Follow Dr. Lee's example. Look back at what Jesus has done for you. Look forward to all that he has prepared for you. And above all, remember that Jesus has a plan that includes the good and the bad, and it is all ultimately for your good. Thank you.